The ballroom was a blur of color and noise, all crystal chandeliers and swirling gowns and laughter that felt like it was mocking her. Catherine Winters pressed herself further into the alcove behind the velvet curtains, trying to make herself invisible, trying to stop the tears that kept falling no matter how hard she willed them to stop. She'd thought she could endure it, thought she could stand in the same room as Lord Edmund Hartley and his new fiancée without breaking, thought she could smile politely when people whispered about how quickly he'd moved on, how little their courtship had apparently meant to him. She'd been wrong. "Are you crying?" Catherine's head snapped up. A man stood at the edge of her hiding spot, tall and dark-haired with eyes that looked almost silver in the candlelight. She recognized him immediately. Everyone in London recognized Alexander Thornton, the Duke of Ashford, wealthy, powerful, and completely out of her reach in every possible way. "No," she lied, wiping furiously at her face. "I'm perfectly fine." He didn't move, didn't leave, just looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "You're terrible at lying," he observed. "Your voice does this thing when you're not being honest. Gets higher, more clipped. I don't know what you're talking about. There, you did it again." He stepped closer, and Catherine realized with horror that there was no graceful way to escape. She was trapped in an alcove with a duke while crying at a ball. This was a new low, even for her spectacularly bad week. "I'm fine," she insisted. "Please just go back to the party. Who made you cry?" The question was so direct, so unexpected that Catherine actually laughed. It came out wet and broken, but it was still a laugh. "Does it matter?" "Yes." He said it with such certainty that Catherine felt something twist in her chest. "It matters very much. Tell me who made you cry and I'll make them regret it. You don't even know me." "I know you're crying at a ball instead of dancing. I know someone hurt you badly enough that you'd rather hide behind curtains than face them. That's enough." He pulled out a handkerchief, pristine white linen with initials embroidered in silver thread. "Here." Catherine took it because refusing would have been rude, and she'd been raised better than that. The fabric smelled like sandalwood and something else she couldn't identify, something that made her want to close her eyes and breathe deeply. "Thank you," she managed. "You're very kind, but I'm fine, really." "Stop saying you're fine. You're clearly not fine." He leaned against the wall beside her alcove, apparently settling in for a longer conversation. "I'm not leaving until you tell me what happened." "Why do you care?" "Because no one should cry alone at a ball. It's a terrible waste of a good party." He smiled slightly. "Though between you and me, Lady Pemberton's parties are usually quite boring. You're not missing much." Despite everything, Catherine felt herself smile. "That's rather unkind to say about your hostess." "It's honest. There's a difference." His expression turned serious. "Now, who hurt you?" Catherine looked at him. This duke who'd appeared out of nowhere and refused to leave her to her misery. She should send him away. Should maintain her dignity and pretend everything was fine. But she was so tired of pretending. "Lord Edmund Hartley," she said quietly. We were courting. For 6 months. He made promises. Talked about the future. About marriage. And then 3 weeks ago, he ended it. No explanation. No warning. Just ended it. And tonight I learned why. Why? He's engaged. To Lady Victoria Pemberton, our hostess's daughter. Apparently he's been courting her for the past 2 months, while he was still courting me. The Duke's expression darkened. He courted 2 women simultaneously, apparently, and he chose her, which is fine. I mean, she's beautiful and wealthy and the daughter of an earl. I'm just a baron's daughter with a modest dowry. Of course he chose her. That's not fine. None of that is fine. It's how the world works, Your Grace. It's how cowards work. Honorable men don't string 2 women along while they decide which one benefits them more. He pushed off the wall, and for a moment Catherine thought he was going to storm back into the ballroom. Instead, he turned to face her fully. "Where is he now?" "Please don't do anything. It'll only make things worse." "I'm not going to do anything violent if that's what you're worried about, though I'm certainly tempted." He offered his hand. "Come with me." "What? No. I can't go back out there." "Everyone will see that I've been crying. Then we'll go somewhere else. The garden, the library, anywhere but this alcove where you're hiding like you've done something wrong." "I don't even know you." "Alexander Thornton, Duke of Ashford. There, now you know me. And you are?" "Catherine Winters." "Well, Miss Winters, I'm not leaving you to cry alone in an alcove, so you have 2 choices. Come with me somewhere more comfortable, or endure my company here. Either way, I'm staying." Catherine looked at his outstretched hand. She should refuse. should send him away and pull herself together and go home with what little dignity she had left. But his hand was steady and his eyes were kind, and she was so tired of being alone. "The garden," she heard herself say. "If we're going somewhere, I'd like fresh air." His smile was warm. "Excellent choice. Before we continue, dear listener, tell me, where are you listening to us right now? From the kitchen while preparing lunch? From the living room, taking a well-deserved break? Or perhaps from the bedroom, relaxing after a long day? Leave it in the comments. We love knowing you're here with us. And if you're enjoying this story, if the romance is touching your heart, please tap the like button right below. It helps us so much to continue bringing beautiful stories like this to you. And if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe now. We have a new exciting story every week waiting for you. Now let's return to our story, because you will not believe what happens next. The garden was blessedly quiet, the noise from the ballroom muted by distance and carefully cultivated hedges. Catherine breathed in the cool night air and felt something in her chest loosen slightly. "Better?" Alexander asked. "Yes, thank you." They walked in silence for a moment, following a path lined with rose bushes that glowed pale in the moonlight. Catherine was acutely aware of his presence beside her, of how tall he was, of how her hand still rested lightly on his arm, even though they'd reached their destination. "How long were you hiding in that alcove?" he asked finally. "About 20 minutes, maybe longer. I lost track of time." "And before that, when did you see Hartley and his fiancée?" "Immediately when I arrived. They were dancing, looking very happy together." Catherine's voice caught. She was wearing a ring, a sapphire. "He told me once that sapphires were his favorite stone. I thought he meant for me. But apparently he's an idiot who doesn't deserve you. You don't know me well enough to make that judgment. I know you hid rather than making a scene. I know you're more worried about causing problems than about your own pain. I know you're trying very hard not to cry again, even though you have every right to." He stopped walking, turned to face her. "And I know that any man who could court you for 6 months and then choose someone else is either blind or a fool. Possibly both." Catherine felt fresh tears threatening. "Please don't be kind to me. I'm barely holding together as it is." "Then fall apart. I won't tell anyone." And somehow, that simple permission was what broke her. The tears came again, harder this time, and before she quite knew what was happening, Alexander had pulled her into his arms and was holding her while she cried into his perfectly tailored coat. "I'm sorry," she gasped. "I'm ruining your jacket. I have others. Cry as much as you need." So she did. She cried for the 6 months she'd wasted on Edmund, for the future she'd imagined that would never happen, for the humiliation of learning about his engagement from ballroom gossip, for the way everyone had looked at her with pity when she'd arrived tonight. When she finally stopped, when there were no more tears left, Alexander handed her another handkerchief. "How many of those do you carry?" she asked, her voice rough. "Usually 2. You've now depleted my entire supply. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing. You've done nothing wrong." He guided her to a bench tucked between 2 rose bushes. "Sit. Breathe. Tell me about him. Why do you want to know?" "Because understanding what you saw in him might help you understand why you're better off without him." Catherine sat, and Alexander sat beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him in the cool night air. "He was charming," she said finally. "Attentive. He said the right things and showed up when he said he would and made me feel like I mattered. And I thought he loved me, or was beginning to. I thought we were building something real." "Did you love him?" Catherine considered the question honestly. "I loved the idea of him, the idea of being loved, of having someone choose me. But I don't think I knew him well enough to really love him. Not the way love should be. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense. It's easier to love an idea than a person. Ideas don't disappoint you." Spoken like someone with experience. "I've had my share of disappointments." He smiled slightly. "Though none recently. I've learned to be more careful." "Is that why you're not married? Being careful?" "Partially. Mostly because I haven't found anyone who wants me for me rather than for my title and money." He said it matter-of-factly, without self-pity. "It's surprisingly difficult to determine who's genuine when you're a duke." "I imagine it would be." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Alexander spoke again. "What are you going to do?" "About Edmund?" "Nothing. What can I do? He's engaged to someone else. It's done. I meant about yourself, about moving forward." "Oh." Catherine hadn't thought that far ahead. "I suppose I'll go home. Try to avoid society events where I might see them." Eventually, people will forget about the whole thing and move on to the next scandal. That sounds terrible. It sounds practical. It sounds like you're letting him win. Letting him dictate your life and your choices. What else am I supposed to do? Pretend I'm fine? Dance and smile and act like my heart isn't broken? Yes, exactly that. Alexander turned to face her fully. Miss Winters, I'm going to make you an unusual proposal. I beg your pardon? Not that kind of proposal, though the fact that your mind went there is interesting. He smiled at her blush. I'm proposing a partnership, a temporary arrangement that benefits us both. I don't understand. Dance with me. Tomorrow night at the Pemberton Ball, and the night after that at Lady Hertford's musicale. Be seen with me. Let everyone think that the Duke of Ashford is interested in Catherine Winters. Catherine stared at him. Why would you do that? Because it would help you, give you confidence. Show Hartley that you're not sitting home crying over him. Show society that you're desirable and interesting and worth pursuing. And what do you get out of this arrangement? Honestly, relief. If people think I'm courting someone, they'll stop throwing their daughters at me at every event. My mother has been matchmaking aggressively, and I could use a respite. So I'd be, what? A shield? A partner? A friend, hopefully. Someone I can actually talk to at these tedious parties without worrying about ulterior motives. It was insane. Ridiculous. The Duke of Ashford didn't need to fake interest in a baron's daughter to avoid matchmaking mamas. He could have anyone, but the way he was looking at her, steady and genuine, made Catherine think he actually meant it. 1 month, she heard herself say. 1 month of fake courtship. Then we end it amicably and go our separate ways. 1 month, he agreed. Starting tomorrow night. Can you face the ballroom again? Show everyone you're perfectly fine. I don't know if I can pull that off convincingly. Then don't be fine. Be angry. Be determined. Be anything but broken. Because Catherine Winters, from what I've seen tonight, you are many things, but broken isn't one of them. And you, dear listener, what would you do in Catherine's place? Have you lived through something similar? Do you know someone who went through a situation like this? Tell your story in the comments. We read each one with affection and love knowing your experiences. And if this story is making you sigh, smile, or even shed a tear, share it with someone special. Think of that friend, sister, or daughter who would also love this journey. Send her the link. Love is meant to be shared, isn't it? But let's return, because what is about to happen will leave you speechless. The next evening, Catherine stood in front of her mirror and barely recognized herself. Her lady's maid had worked wonders, arranging her hair in an elaborate style that made her look older, more sophisticated. Her dress was her finest, deep emerald silk that brought out the green in her hazel eyes. She looked confident, poised, nothing like the woman who'd cried in an alcove last night. You look beautiful, miss, her maid said. I look terrified. That too. But beautiful terrified is better than regular terrified. Catherine smiled despite her nerves. I suppose that's something. When she arrived at the Pemberton Ball, because of course Alexander had chosen to start their arrangement at the home of Edmund's fiancée's family, he was waiting for her in the entrance hall. Miss Winters, he said, bowing over her hand. You look lovely. You're a terrible liar. I'm an excellent liar. That's how I know I'm telling the truth right now. He offered his arm. Ready? No. Excellent. Neither am I. We'll be terrible together. He led her into the ballroom, and Catherine felt every eye turn toward them, felt the whispers start immediately. The Duke of Ashford, arriving with Catherine Winters, the girl Edmund Hartley had jilted. This was going to be the scandal of the season. Ignore them, Alexander murmured. Look at me. Only me. Catherine did, and found that when she looked at his face, at the small smile playing at his lips, the rest of the room seemed to fade slightly. Better? He asked, marginally. I'll take it. Now shall we dance? Everyone will talk. Everyone's already talking. Might as well give them something worth discussing. He swept her onto the dance floor, and Catherine realized several things at once. First, that Alexander was an excellent dancer, moving with a confidence that made it easy to follow. Second, that having his attention felt different from Edmund's attention had, more intense, more real. And third, that Edmund was watching them from across the room with an expression Catherine couldn't quite read. He's staring, she whispered. Good. Let him. What if he comes over? Then I'll handle it. You just focus on breathing and trying not to step on my feet. I'm not going to step on your feet. There's that spirit, see? You're already doing better. They danced 2 waltzes, which was just shy of scandalous. And then Alexander led her to the refreshment table, where Edmund and Victoria were standing. Catherine's steps faltered. "Alexander, trust me," he murmured. "Ashford," Edmund said, nodding stiffly. "Miss Winters, I didn't expect to see you here." "Where else would I be?" Catherine asked, and was proud that her voice didn't shake. "It's the social event of the season." "Of course, I just thought, that is, given recent circumstances." "Recent circumstances?" Alexander's voice was pleasant, but there was steel underneath. "What circumstances would those be, Hartley?" Edmund's face reddened. "I merely meant—" "I can't imagine what you meant. Miss Winters looks perfectly well to me. Radiant even. Wouldn't you agree?" "Yes, of course. Very radiant." Victoria had been watching this exchange with increasing confusion. Now she spoke up. "Edmund, darling, who is this?" "Miss Catherine Winters," Catherine said, extending her hand. "I don't believe we've been formally introduced, Lady Victoria, though I've heard so much about you." Victoria shook her hand, still looking puzzled. "How do you know Edmund?" There was a pause. Edmund looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. Alexander looked amused, and Catherine felt a surge of something that might have been anger, or might have been satisfaction, possibly both. "We're old acquaintances," Catherine said smoothly, "though I believe congratulations are in order on your engagement. I hope you'll be very happy together." "Thank you," Victoria said, still confused. She looked at Edmund. "You never mentioned a Miss Winters." "There wasn't anything to mention," Edmund said quickly. "We were merely friends. Briefly." "Very briefly," Catherine agreed. "Barely 6 months. Hardly worth mentioning at all." Edmund paled. Victoria's eyes narrowed, and Alexander's hand tightened slightly on Catherine's arm in what might have been approval, or might have been a warning not to push further. "If you'll excuse us," Alexander said smoothly. "I promised Miss Winters the next dance, and the music is starting. Lovely to see you both." He swept Catherine away before anyone could respond. "That was cruel," he said once they were safely on the dance floor again. "It was honest. Brutal honesty is still brutal. He deserved it. Absolutely. I'm not criticizing. I'm admiring." He spun her around, and Catherine felt herself smiling for the first time all evening. "Feel better?" "Actually, yes. Is that terrible?" "Not at all. Revenge is very satisfying when done properly, and you did it perfectly, just enough to make him uncomfortable without making yourself look bad. You're a terrible influence. I prefer to think of myself as encouraging your natural instincts for self-preservation." He pulled her slightly closer, close enough that it was just barely proper. "Catherine, can I ask you something?" "What? What was the secret?" She blinked. "What secret?" "Last night, when I found you crying, you said something about Hartley's engagement, but there was something else. Something you didn't tell me. I could see it in your face." Catherine's heart stuttered. "I don't know what you mean." "There. You did that thing again." Voice higher, more clipped. "You're lying." "I'm not—" "Catherine." He said her name gently. "You don't have to tell me, but I want you to know that you can. Whatever it is, it won't change anything." Catherine looked up at him. This Duke who'd appeared in her life yesterday and turned everything upside down, who'd held her while she cried and proposed a fake courtship and defended her to her former suitor, who was looking at her now like he actually cared about the answer, and she found herself wanting to tell him, wanting to share the secret she'd been carrying alone for 3 weeks. "Not here," she whispered. "Too many people." "The garden?" "Yes." They left the ballroom quietly, and Catherine felt her pulse hammering as they walked the same path they'd taken the night before. When they reached the bench, Alexander didn't sit, just waited. "When Edmund ended our courtship," Catherine said slowly, "he said it was because he'd realized we weren't suited, that he cared for me but not in the right way, that it would be wrong to continue when he knew he couldn't offer me what I deserved. That sounds almost noble, for a coward." That's what I thought, until 3 weeks later when I learned about his engagement to Victoria, and I realized he'd already been courting her, while he was courting me, and he'd chosen her because she was better, more beautiful, more wealthy, more connected. That's terrible, but you told me that part last night. What's the secret? Catherine took a deep breath. The night before he ended things, we were at the theater, in a private box. No chaperone because my maid was ill, and we'd been courting for months, and I trusted him. And he kissed me. That's not so scandalous. It wasn't just a kiss, Alexander. It was more. We stopped before, but it was more than a simple kiss. Much more. And I let it happen because I thought we were going to marry. Because he'd made promises. Because I believed him when he said he loved me. She forced herself to look at Alexander's face, bracing for disgust or judgment or pity, but his expression was simply thoughtful. Did he pressure you? He asked quietly. No, I wanted it too. I thought it was the beginning of our life together. I thought we'd be engaged within the month. I was an idiot. You were trusting. There's a difference. I was naive, and now I'm ruined. If anyone knew, if it ever came out, I'd be completely destroyed socially. My family would be shamed. My younger sister's prospects would be damaged. Everything would be ruined because I was stupid enough to trust a man who was already planning to leave me. Alexander was quiet for a long moment. Then he sat down on the bench, patted the space beside him. Catherine sat, grateful her legs had stopped shaking. You're not ruined, he said finally. You're someone who made a decision based on trust and love and the expectation of a future. That's not shameful. That's human. Society wouldn't see it that way. Society is often wrong. He took her hand, and Catherine let him. Does Hartley know that you're carrying this fear? I don't think so. He never mentioned it, never acknowledged what happened between us. Just ended the courtship and moved on like those 6 months meant nothing. He's a bigger fool than I thought. Alexander squeezed her hand gently. Catherine, I need you to understand something. What happened doesn't make you less, doesn't make you unworthy or damaged or any of the things I can see you thinking. It makes you someone who loved and trusted, and there's nothing shameful in that. You're just saying that to be kind. I'm saying it because it's true, and because I need you to know that this secret, this thing you've been carrying alone and afraid, doesn't change how I see you. How do you see me? He smiled. As someone brave enough to face a ballroom full of gossips the day after having your heart broken. As someone who made Edmund Hartley squirm with perfect politeness. As someone I'm glad I found crying behind a curtain. Catherine felt tears threatening again. But these were different, softer. Thank you. For what? For not judging. For listening. For making me feel less alone. Catherine, you don't have to be alone. Not anymore. This arrangement between us, it doesn't have to be just for show. We could actually be friends. Real friends. People who trust each other and tell each other the truth. Even the ugly truths. Especially those. Those are the ones that matter most. They sat together in the garden, hands still linked, and Catherine felt something shift in her chest. Something that felt almost like hope. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of social events and quiet conversations. Alexander called on Catherine daily, bringing books and staying for tea that stretched into hours. He took her driving, to museums, to lectures on subjects that fascinated them both. They talked about everything and nothing, politics and poetry, her charity work teaching orphans to read, his frustrations managing estates and navigating parliament, the loneliness of being valued for titles and money rather than character. And somewhere in those conversations, Catherine's fake courtship became startlingly real. She noticed the way Alexander's eyes crinkled when he laughed, the way he listened when she spoke, really listened, like her opinions actually mattered, the way he challenged her assumptions and made her think and never once tried to make her into someone she wasn't. She noticed that when he touched her hand, even briefly, her heart raced, that she looked forward to seeing him more than anything else in her day, that the thought of their arrangement ending made her chest tight with something that felt dangerously like grief. She was falling in love with him. The realization hit her one afternoon as they walked through Hyde Park, arguing about whether Milton was overrated. He's not overrated, Alexander insisted. Paradise Lost is a masterpiece. Paradise Lost is 9 books of theological posturing disguised as epic poetry. That's blasphemy. That's literary criticism. There's a difference. He laughed, and Catherine felt it like warmth spreading through her chest. This man, this impossible, wonderful, completely unexpected man, who'd found her crying at a ball and somehow become essential to her happiness. She loved him. The problem was that their arrangement had an expiration date. 1 more week, and they were supposed to end things amicably and go their separate ways, return to being strangers who'd helped each other through a difficult month. The thought was unbearable. You're quiet, Alexander observed. That's unusual. Usually I can't get you to stop talking about Milton's failings. I don't want to talk about Milton. Thank God. Neither do I, actually. I was just being contrary. He steered them toward a quieter path. What's wrong? Nothing. Your voice just went higher. You're lying. Catherine stopped walking. Our month is almost up. Yes. We're supposed to end this. Go back to our separate lives. That was the arrangement. I don't want to end it. The words came out in a rush. I know that's not what we agreed. I know this was supposed to be temporary and beneficial and nothing more, but I don't want it to end, Alexander. I don't want to go back to not knowing you." He was very still. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I've fallen in love with you. Completely. Impossibly. In a way that makes absolutely no sense given our arrangement. And I know you probably don't feel the same way. And I'm making everything awkward. But I had to tell you because I can't pretend anymore." For a long moment, Alexander said nothing. Just looked at her with an expression Catherine couldn't read. Then slowly, he smiled. "Catherine, I've been in love with you since the second night. When you told Edmund Hartley to his face that your 6 months together were barely worth mentioning, I knew then that I was in trouble." "You, what?" "I'm in love with you. Desperately. Completely. In a way that's frankly quite inconvenient, given that I'm supposed to be helping you get over someone else." "You love me," Catherine repeated, barely able to process it. "Did you think I called on you every day because I enjoy tea that much? Or that I took you to lectures because I needed company? I've been courting you, Catherine. Really courting you. For weeks now. But you said this was fake, that it was just to help me and give you relief from matchmaking." I lied. "Well, not entirely, but mostly." He took both her hands in his. "I saw you crying that night and something in me just broke. I wanted to fix it, wanted to know you. And I knew you'd never give me a real chance if I just asked. You'd think I was being charitable or pitying you. So I suggested an arrangement that would let me spend time with you without you questioning my motives. That's incredibly manipulative. It's incredibly strategic. There's a difference. Alexander, I love you, Catherine. I love your sharp mind and your terrible opinions about Milton, and the way you light up when you talk about teaching children to read. I love that you're brave enough to face down your ex-suitor and kind enough to wish him happiness with someone else. I love that you trusted me with your secret and didn't run away when I said it didn't matter." Catherine felt tears streaming down her face. "I love you too. I tried not to. I told myself it was just gratitude or loneliness or anything but love, but I was lying to myself. Then let's stop lying. Let's stop pretending this is fake when it's the most real thing in both our lives. What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we turn our fake courtship into a real one. Let me court you properly, with the intention of marriage and a future and all the things that should have been there from the start. You want to marry me? Even knowing about Edmund, about what happened? I want to marry you because of who you are. Everything you've been through, everything you've survived, everything you are. That's what I love. That's what I want." He cupped her face gently. "Will you let me? Let me love you? Let me spend the rest of my life proving that you were worth waiting for?" Catherine laughed through her tears. "Yes. Yes, to all of it." He kissed her then, tender and sweet, and Catherine felt the last pieces of her broken heart click back into place. Not the same as before. Better. Stronger. Healed in the places where Edmund had damaged her. The formal courtship that followed was everything Catherine had dreamed of, and nothing like what she'd experienced with Edmund. Alexander was attentive but genuine, romantic but real. He brought her flowers with notes that made her laugh. He took her to art exhibitions and asked her opinion on every piece. He introduced her to his mother, the Dowager Duchess, who took one look at Catherine and declared her perfect. Finally, the Dowager said, a woman with actual thoughts in her head, "I was beginning to think my son would end up with some simpering miss who couldn't tell Aristotle from arithmetic." "Mother," Alexander said warningly. "What?" "It's true. Miss Winters, do you know how many vapid young ladies I've had to endure at dinner? Women who think conversation means discussing the weather and agreeing with everything a man says." "I can imagine it was trying," Catherine said diplomatically. "Trying doesn't begin to cover it." "But you argued with my son about Milton at the Hartwell dinner party. I was sitting 3 seats away and I could hear you defending your position with actual evidence. It was delightful. You were listening?" "Of course I was listening." "Far more interesting than Lord Hartwell's tedious story about his hunting dogs." The Dowager smiled. "You'll do very nicely, Miss Winters, very nicely indeed." The engagement was announced 6 weeks after their Hyde Park confession. Society buzzed with speculation. The Duke of Ashford, marrying the girl Edmund Hartley had jilted. Some saw it as romantic, others as scandalous. Most simply saw it as unexpected. Catherine's younger sister Sophie was thrilled. "A duke!" she squealed when Catherine told her the news. "You're marrying an actual duke, and he's handsome and kind and completely besotted with you. It's like something from a novel." "It's not a novel, Sophie. It's my life. Your life is better than a novel. At least in novels, the heroine doesn't usually find her duke while crying behind a curtain." "Fair point. The wedding preparations were elaborate but joyful. Catherine found herself enjoying the process in a way she hadn't with Edmund. Then she'd been planning a future she wasn't sure was real. Now she was building something solid with a man who loved her completely. Edmund and Victoria attended the wedding, as propriety demanded. Victoria looked genuinely happy for them, having apparently forgiven the barely worth mentioning comment. Edmund looked uncomfortable, but managed to offer congratulations. "I'm glad you found happiness," he said stiffly. "I am too," Catherine replied. "Thank you for ending our courtship, Edmund. If you hadn't, I never would have met Alexander." "Yes, well, I hope you'll be very happy together." "We will be." And they were. Their marriage was everything a partnership should be, built on friendship and trust, and the kind of love that grew stronger with time, rather than fading. On their first anniversary, Alexander gave Catherine a portrait, not of her alone, but of both of them, in a garden, on a bench between rose bushes. "This is where we were," Catherine said, recognizing the scene immediately. "The night I told you my secret. The night I knew for certain I was going to love you forever," Alexander corrected. "I commissioned it months ago. I wanted to remember that moment, when you trusted me with something that frightened you, when I got to show you that nothing you could tell me would change how I felt." Catherine studied the painting. The artist had captured something essential, not just their faces but their emotions, the vulnerability in her expression, the tenderness in his, the way they sat close but not touching, connected by something deeper than physical proximity. "It's beautiful. You're beautiful. The painting is just accurate. Flatterer. Truth-teller. There's a difference." He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Do you ever regret it? Agreeing to that fake courtship?" "Never. Best terrible decision I ever made. It wasn't terrible, it was strategic. It was manipulative. It was both. And it led us here." He turned her to face him. "I love you, Catherine. Every day I love you more than the day before, even when you're wrong about Milton." "I'm not wrong about Milton. You just have terrible taste in epic poetry. See, this is exactly why I married you. Who else would insult my literary judgment on our anniversary? Someone with sense and standards." He kissed her, and Catherine thought about how far they'd come, from tears in an alcove to laughter in their own home, from secrets and shame to openness and joy, from broken hearts to a love so complete it sometimes took her breath away. Sometimes the best love stories started with the worst moments, with crying at a ball and a duke who cared enough to ask who made you cry, with secrets shared and grace given and the courage to love again after having your heart broken. And really, Catherine thought as Alexander held her close, that was the kind of love story worth having. We're almost reaching the end of this exciting journey. But if you love the romance of Catherine and Alexander, I have wonderful news. We have dozens of other stories waiting for you here on the channel. Breathtaking historical romances, heartwarming second chances, unlikely loves that seem impossible until they happen. Each story more exciting than the last. After finishing this one, scroll down and check out our playlists. I'm sure you'll find your next favorite story. And don't forget, activate the notification bell. That way you receive an alert whenever we publish a new story. Because let's be honest, you already know you'll want the next one, right? Now yes, let's get to the moment you were waiting for, the ending your heart asked for. Years passed, and their love only deepened. They had 3 children, 2 daughters and a son, all of whom grew up hearing the story of how their parents met. "Tell us again," their youngest daughter Margaret would beg, "about how Papa found you crying." "Well," Catherine would say, settling into the familiar tale, "I was hiding behind a curtain at a very boring ball." "Because of the mean man," Margaret would interrupt. "Because Lord Hartley had broken my heart, yes, and I thought my life was over. I thought I'd never be happy again. But then Papa found you," their son Thomas would add. "But then your father found me, and he asked who made me cry. And somehow that simple question changed everything." Their oldest daughter, Elizabeth, being the most romantic of the 3, would always ask the same question. "Did you know right away that you loved him?" "No," Catherine would admit, and "I didn't know for weeks. But looking back, I think I started falling that very first night, when he held me while I cried and didn't judge me for falling apart." "And Papa?" Margaret would ask. "When did he know?" Alexander, if he was there, would pull Catherine close. "The second night. When your mother told Edmund Hartley that their courtship was barely worth mentioning. I knew then that I was doomed." "That's not romantic," Elizabeth would protest. "It's very romantic. Your mother faced down the man who'd hurt her with perfect grace and a sharp tongue. How could I not fall in love with that? The children would giggle, and Catherine would add the part they always wanted to hear. The important thing is that what seemed like the worst moment of my life, crying at that ball, having my heart broken, led to the best thing that ever happened to me. Sometimes our worst moments are actually blessings in disguise, because they lead us where we're meant to be, Thomas would recite, having heard it 100 times. Exactly. On their 25th anniversary, Catherine and Alexander returned to the Pemberton estate for a ball. Lady Pemberton, now elderly but still hosting elaborate parties, had insisted. "It's where you met," she said. "Where else would you celebrate?" Edmund and Victoria were there, their own marriage apparently happy and stable. They had 4 children and seemed genuinely content with the life they'd built. "It's strange," Victoria said to Catherine during a quiet moment. "If Edmund had married you instead of me, none of us would be where we are now." "No," Catherine agreed. "We'd all be in completely different places. Do you ever wonder about it? About what might have been?" "Sometimes, but only to be grateful it didn't happen. No offense to your husband." Victoria laughed. "None taken. I think we're all exactly where we should be." Later that evening, Catherine found herself standing in the same alcove where Alexander had found her 25 years before. She wasn't crying this time, just remembering. "Found you," Alexander said, appearing at her elbow exactly as he had all those years ago. "Were you looking?" "Always. Even when I know exactly where you are, I'm still looking for you." He took her hand. "Do you remember that night? How terrified you were? How certain you were that your life was over?" "I remember. I also remember a duke who was kind enough to refuse to leave me alone. Best decision I ever made." "Well, second best. The best was telling you I loved you. Third best. The actual best was marrying me. Technically, you're right, but it's all the same decision, really. Choose Catherine. Choose Catherine always. Choose Catherine forever." She kissed him, there in the alcove where it all began, and thought about how blessed she was, how a moment of heartbreak had led to a lifetime of love, how crying at a ball had brought her the most wonderful man she'd ever known. "Thank you," she whispered against his lips. "For what? For finding me, for asking who made me cry, for loving me even when I told you my secret, for choosing me every day for 25 years. Catherine, I'd choose you for 2,500 years if I had them. You're the easiest choice I've ever made." And really, Catherine thought as they walked back to the ballroom hand in hand, that was the perfect ending to their story. Not an ending at all, but a continuation. A love that had started with tears and grown into something beautiful. A partnership that had begun as a fake arrangement and become the realest thing in both their lives. Sometimes the best love stories started behind curtains at boring balls. Sometimes they started with secrets and shame and broken hearts. But if you were lucky, if you were brave, if you trusted the right person with your pain, those stories could become something extraordinary. And Catherine Winters, now Catherine Thornton, Duchess of Ashford, had been very lucky indeed. And so ends the story of Catherine and Alexander. A journey about finding love in unexpected places and discovering that our worst moments can lead to our greatest blessings. About the courage to be vulnerable and the strength to love again after heartbreak. About secrets that don't define us and grace that transforms pain into purpose. I hope this story touched your heart as much as it touched mine bringing it to you. If it moved you, if you sighed, if you smiled along with our characters, leave your like. It motivates us to continue. And tell us in the comments, what was your favorite moment? What touched you most? We want to know. Each comment is read with affection. Are you missing it already? Don't worry, we have a new story coming very soon. Subscribe and activate notifications so you don't miss it. And while you wait, explore our channel. We have so many other beautiful stories waiting for you. Thank you so much for your company, for choosing to spend this time with us, for opening your heart to one more love story. Until the next journey, dear listener. May your heart always be open to love, to hope, and to the good moments life reserves for us. A warm hug, and see you soon.